DVa is currently the most picked tank in Grandmaster and has the 3rd highest win percentage out of all the tanks. So, what's going on? Well, as I'm sure you've heard from many content creators, DVa's been severely overtuned for the last few weeks.
The most atrocious part of her kit is the fact that she has so much health and armor with the Giga Armor, headshot reduction, all this stuff, and they don't even touch it!
But why? How has this gone under the radar for so long? Why didn't DVa get nerfed in the recent hotfix? And what do we even do about DVa? Well, firstly, I think it's useful to take a look at DVa's history. You see, I've made videos similar to this one in the past. For example, I made one on Tracer, and she's been basically meta for 8 years, barring some exceptions like the Goats meta. When I made my video on Mauga, he was obviously just massively overtuned from launch, and he terrorized the ladder, especially if you didn't buy the battle pass at the time. But DVa, she's never been meta in Overwatch 2's lifespan up until now. In the 2022 Summer Showdown, we had that Queen Lucio Brig meta, which lasted about 2 months. Then we had that Winston Lucio Kiriko meta at the tail end of 2022. For the majority of 2023, we had a massive Winston Sombra Tracer meta, and at the end of 2023, the meta was actually all over the place because of the recent patch. Teams like Dallas played Zarya, teams like London played the Ryan stuff, and teams like Boston played the Orisa Bastion stuff to counter the Ryan. We even still saw some of the Winston Sombra Tracer stuff on occasion, but of course, Florida came out on top with different variations of the Sigma comp. Notice how, despite all of this tank variety, DVa was hardly played, if at all. Then you go to the World Cup in November 2023 and we saw 2 major comps. The Sigma Bapillari stuff which Saudi Arabia pioneered, as well as the Lucio Bap Sigma Mei variation that Finland took into the fray. Of course, Team China also played Doomfist Dive and Winston Dive. Now, beginning of this year, for stage 1 of OWCS, we had Mauga, Ramatra, and sometimes Orisa come to dominate the meta. In stage 2, the meta was mainly the same, but with Mauga falling out of the fray, with teams opting for either Orisa or Ramatra. And only now, 2 years since pros have been playing Overwatch 2, has DVa started to regularly appear in pro play. Of course, we saw this in the Esports World Cup, but even in stage 3 of OWCS, which just happened a week ago, DVa was still a mainstay pick. So, what happens? Well, there's 3 key factors you should pay attention to. The first is DVa's insane power creep. DVa's gotten a lot more changes than I thought, so buckle up for this one. The first of many was August 2023, where DVa had her booster cooldown reduced from 4 seconds to 3.5. If you've watched my recent DVa guide, you know how important boosters are, so don't sleep on this change. The next change was in October 2023, where DVa had the movement speed reduction on her cannons reduced by 10% and a 25% projectile speed increase on her missiles. The next change was in June of this year, where the weapon spread of DVa was reduced by 10% and the impact damage on her boosters were increased by 10. Then of course, the nuclear change was in the month after, with DVa having a 3.5 second defense matrix and greatly increased micro missile damage. Of course, her matrix increase was reverted, but that leads me on to the second factor of DVa's rise, which is of course the tank and armor changes. DVa was given 75 extra armor in the Season 9 patch, meaning she has 375 total armor. To give some perspective, that is the most amount of armor any tank has in the game. Yes, more than Orisa, Ramatra, and Reinhardt. Of course, in May this year, armor was also reverted back to how it functioned before Overwatch 2, giving a flat 5 damage off projectiles up to a maximum of 50% damage taken off. However, it was yet again buffed to remove a flat 10 damage of projectiles in July. Characters like Soldier and Bastion were hit the hardest by this, since Soldier now deals 9.5 damage per bullet instead of 14, and Bastion deals 15 damage per bullet instead of 20. Of course, we can't forget the 25% headshot reduction, also given in that tank patch in July. And lastly, most indirectly, we can't forget about the death of Hitscan. Sojourn had her one-shot gone, Cassidy does fuck all damage at distance, and Ashe just got a reload nerf and a damage nerf. I could make an entire video on the death of Hitscan, it's been that tragic. And frankly, it's not just Hitscan that feels bad. Pharah's been nerfed HP-wise, Sombra's been nerfed HP-wise alongside that virus damage, and Hando's been nerfed HP-wise as well. There's also been indirect buffs to DVa, like this recent Winston nerf, which just encourages more players and teams to pick DVa over Winston. Don't get me wrong, Winston needed a nerf, but firstly, this wasn't the right nerf to do, and secondly, this isn't nearly enough. Combine all these factors and in just the span of a year, DVa's gone from one of the most mediocre tanks in the hero pool to an unkillable Giga tank that needs to be changed. But why haven't the devs nerfed DVa yet? Why didn't they nerf her in the hotfix patch alongside Winston if every creator and high level player is complaining about DVa? I mean, you're seeing in the background with Gale Adelaide's, but so many creators have called out DVa. Well, that's where DVa's value floor and value ceiling come into play. In other words, the average player in gold or platinum just isn't getting the max potential value out of DVa, and you can see this by the numbers. If you check DVa's win rate on Overbuff and go through each rank, it slowly increases. It starts off as 49.3% in bronze, 49.1% in silver, 49.7% in gold, 51.1% in plat, 52.1% in diamond, 52.6% in master, and 53.1% in grandmaster. I will say, the last time I used Overbuff in my Jungle Queen video, people told me it wasn't that accurate, so do take these with a grain of salt. Apparently, DVa's pick rate also increases each time too. The reality is, DVa is not a noob stomper. She's not like Mauga, where it's very intuitive in terms of what his value floor is. You need to actually time your boosters and missiles well, you need to actually hit your missiles, and you need to not feed, which is easy to do for higher level players, but clearly not for the average player. And that leads me on to DVa's value ceiling, and another potential reason as to why she's strong. The first is actually Juno's Hypering. Now in my Juno guide and in my one Juno tip for every hero, this was mentioned multiple times, but in Korea, DVa Juno is actually incredibly potent on maps like Circuit Royale because DVa can just fly and blow up anyone, and the speed boost makes it easier to hit your missiles. If you watch back Gale's tweets, you can see that on most, if not all occasions, the DVa that was flying onto him had Hypering. This led TSM coach Capitology to say the following about how even if Juno isn't amazing, the fact that speed will always be broken in some way will lead high level players to find ways to synergize the Hypering with other abilities. The second factor to DVa's incredible value ceiling is just her design. She can do everything in the game. Dive, bunker, peel, duel, flank, brawl, she can do it all. The reason why she was never picked up in high level play, at least in the past, is because she never had the stats to back it up. But now, she can do pretty much everything to a high level. To put it another way, imagine if you buffed Ryan's swing damage by 25%. That would be crazy, right? But because Reinhardt has clear weaknesses in terms of his range and verticality, picking him on dive maps or maps like Junkertown would still be sketchy. However, DVa has no clear weakness. She's either going to be great everywhere or mediocre everywhere, and that's the issue we're at now. This leads me on to the last section about solutions. What to do about DVa, if anything. I think Samito got it right in his video about the Season 12 hotfix, where tanks either need to be nerfed in terms of their sustain or in terms of their damage. In other words, whether tanks need to have a higher risk or lower rewards. Personally, I want tanks to have a higher risk, so I would nerf the sustain. The armor change needs to be reverted or scaled back, and I would decrease the amount of armor that DVa has. This makes it more punishing and more risky for when DVa does fly up to mark an angle, but unlike past situations, there's actual reward for doing it. She's not just a big nothing burger standing in front of your hitscan. I think maybe her damage needs to be toned back a little bit, but obviously it's important to not go too far. Anyways, that's it for the video. As always, be sure to let me know your thoughts down below, and until next time.